Hello and welcome along to A State of Mind Sell the Jerseys, the football podcast that looks at football kits, football culture and everything else in between. Today we are going to be taking a trip across the broad Atlantic to the land of the free, the home of the brave and the home of the 1994 USA World Cup. Yes, we are going stateside to GLORYLAND. And joining me in our American adventure is a man of many talents. He's a harmonica player with the Wakes. He's a author of the excellent book Another Time and Place, a brief study of the folk music revival. He's also the co-author of the Quick Quiz Questions World Cup quiz book, and he's a regular contributor to most numerous UK folk-based magazine publications. He's also the son of two and a brother. He is my brother, Christopher James Sheridan, and to paraphrase a great icon of Americana and folk music, from California to the New York Island, this World Cup was made for you and me. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And today we're going to be taking a trip to see some amazing sights of the USA World Cup 1994, some great memories, some great kits and some great highlights. Roll the credits.
Just a bit of history.
It is! Out with a shot and it's there!
And he's got to go to Middlesbrough and get something. And I'll tell you, honestly, I will love it if we beat them. Love it.
You can't win anything with kids.
Presumed vehicle of O.J. Simpson is still traveling very slowly northbound along the 5 freeway. He's missed it! He's missed it! And Brazil win the World Cup! Baggio stays rooted
He doesn't step out, hopefully he'll be sent off before he gets up. He's done it!
Chris, today we're going to be looking at the USA World Cup 94, its importance and its significance. We're going to be looking at some of the great heroes, the villains, the kits, the games and the highlights that helped make this such a wonderful event. But before we get Diana Ross to kick things off and take our deep dive into the tournament, what's your opening shots in this World Cup?
Opening memories are the colours, the over-the-top Americana, the razzmatazz, the kits, the hair, the characters. The first introduction really to football, it was a kind of Pandora's box of everything that was not just in the World Cup, but everything that was in soccer related. And that's something that's always kind of stuck with me. Every sort of tournament that has become, USA became the benchmark of, that was a really good World Cup, but was it as good as USA 94?
How old would you have been at the time when this came out?
I'd have been 8. I'd have been the prime age for selling a World Cup to somebody. You get the stickers, you got the excitement of being that age of the World Cup coming along, and because it was also unknown, then it was the perfect storm, for kind of falling in love with it. Also, I'd been a huge wrestling fan, so it wasn't a massive transition. It wasn't like going from Lego to football. It was going, American stadiums, Americana, American daftness to football in America. Probably a lot of things that appealed to me were the same reasons that other people hated the idea of this World Cup.
This is a kind of grape soda flavoured World Cup. But before we kind of get into it, we're going to have a look at the context of the theme. And I think it's important to kind of look at the history of the game stateside in the years leading up to 1994. Once upon a time in America, the population of 40% immigrants from the old world. And it's these immigrants that help to create some of the teams as the country itself emerges and becomes an economic superpower. Chris, factory workers employed workers all across Europe different countries. They helped create the factory teams that kind of tie the countries together by their origin and in some cases religion. The Catholic Church organises some form of leagues as well. Textile factory leagues are created. There's healthy crowds. There's communities that come along for the purpose of watching football, but it doesn't really take off. What's your own thoughts on the process and maybe why this happened?
Well, I think there was, whenever you're kind of talking about the factory teams, like they couldn't, really afford to pay the players just to play football. So it was maybe luring them in with the promise of a job or a good position in the factory. Not just to Americans, but more so to Europeans, and bringing them in from abroad, taking them out their own sort of leagues, and they were playing in this thing, but really, so that I suppose they kind of alienated themselves from people in Europe or from elsewhere. I know even it was starting to become a bit of a concern as well for a lot of people in Scotland. They actually had the SFA in the late 20s had a meeting about the American menace and the threats that posed to the game back home. So I think they kind of felt that sort of alienated themselves in that sense. Also, like it wasn't homegrown American. It wasn't the way that other things were all American. This was very much a sport that was being imported, and it was quite brazenly being imported.
You had teams at this time like Bethlehem Steel, the Chicago Bricklayers, the Indiana Flooring Company, the New Bedford Whalers, who were once known as the Fall River Marksmen. They'd become the Yankees in soccer. And teams like this, actually, they merged with the New York Giants and actually beat Celtic at Fenway, but lose the game in a replay at Yankee Stadium. There's also the Brooklyn Celtics. But as you're talking about here, the idea of factory teams, one of the big things that then flattens factories and destroys and closes down the industries is the Great Depression. And from this, these teams fold up, never to return. American life changes. People don't have the money to go and spend it on going to football or to baseball. But eventually, baseball survives. Why do you think baseball survived, but football didn't?
Again, I think it comes down to, the ingredients. Football is, again, as I say, the import. Baseball is the national pastime. Baseball is the all-American thing. So you're already kind of, your back's to the wall on, who's going to buy into it. So by the time the Great Depression comes and flattens every kind of aspect of life, regular day-to-day things, music industry, everything, it's the weaker things that are going to get not just destroyed, but forgotten. And that's where there's such a void of particularly early American soccer. Certainly even a lot of early results and a lot of early goings on in these days of American football, a lot of it was all lost, over time. Like they had offices in the Empire State Building, eventually left these offices, and in transit, a lot of things literally got lost in the post. So I think for that, you get things like the all-American baseball things, the celebration of Americana. That's going to struggle, but it's going to be okay.
Do you think that then took away the idea of ethnic communities following football teams and people flocked to root for the home team instead and supported whole towns rather than their own ethnic groups at that point?
Yeah, I suppose so. I suppose it... I suppose the kind of then the idea of what they were cheering for before or what they were watching before maybe isn't there to the same extent, or it's a bit tainted if it is still there. So they have to kind of shift their interest to remain current.
What we'll do is we'll take a little look at some of those teams from that era with a wee bit of footage from back in those days. But Chris, there's still football happening in America, even though things have folded on that larger scale. Some of the semi-pro teams continue to play, and they play teams in Europe. Rangers actually play Toronto Ulster United. The US national team participate in the first World Cup, taking home third place medals, and they go again in 1934 to Italy. They beat Mexico 4-0, but are beaten 7-1 by Italy. They don't go in 1938 due to the costs, and their next appearance, and probably their greatest achievement for a long time, would be to beat that English team in the 1950 World Cup. Like, one of the great upsets in football, and people love a sporting success in America, particularly an underdog one. Also one that involves beating an English villain. Surely the defeat of England in the World Cup 1950 should have been the springboard back to popularity in that World Cup.
Well, I mean, you could say that being in that World Cup in itself should have maybe been the springboard, because it's the first time they've been there. It's the first time since the war and things, So even just being there is a big deal. Certainly there was some attention paid to it, not a lot, but even the actual campaign itself wasn't bad. Like, they beat England, that's the most famous one. They lost 3-1 to Spain, but they were winning until 10 minutes to go. And then they lost 3-1. They lost 5-2 to Chile. Again, they were 2-0 down, they brought it back to 2-2, and then they lost 5-2. And then they went out. But they had the same points as England, same points as Chile, and only one team went through. So it wasn't a bad World Cup at all for America. If they had gone further, it probably would have been more of a celebration, more attention paid to it. Post-war, sort of new world. But again, even if they had gone further, even if they had done more, it's still not an American team as such. It's still a foreign team. It's a Scottish manager. Joe Gatkins, that scored the goal against England, he was from Haiti. So he was an American hero, but not an American citizen. So much the American setup, was what was that? And again, it comes back to the thing of the imports, and it can't be all American when it's mostly imported.
It's funny that, because that kind of comes at a time not too long. Well, after this point, we're going to have McCarthyism. We're going to have anti-American activities, un-American activities going on. And as you're talking about, people want to assimilate themselves into the full American citizenship and also being full Americans. Real Americans. So you're going to have that lack of people getting behind those who aren't naturally born American citizens. And also at this point too, you'll have those who were born elsewhere, want to assimilate themselves fully into being all American, so that at that point they stop looking to their backgrounds or fear of not being fully accepted within America. And I think we'd spoken about this off camera, was the people who are with the brackets or hyphens, Italian Americans, Irish Americans who want to become American American.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, that side of wanting to retain your own culture and retain what's part of your literal DNA, what's part of your makeup, but also embrace what's before you, what your adopted culture is, or what your adopted country. So I think there was elements of both of that, but then it's how accepted that's got to be not from the person, but from the person watching that person. So does the question become, if he's an Italian American, is he real American or is he more Italian? How does he project that sort of thing? So I think a lot of that was kind of, it comes back to the whole thing of it being an import.
Mm-hmm. In the 1960s, soccer, football moves on. Even the fact that they don't call it football, it's not fully accepted. It's association soccer, association football, soccer. In the 1960s, some football still exists. Some of the ethnic teams, as they're called, New York, Hungary, Toronto, Croats, so there's different teams that come about in the 1960s. It's not really, it's shunned by sponsors, it's shunned by the media. It's something that can't be sold to Americans. It's seen as an ethnic outsider sport. It's not seen as an all-American part. And it's not until the late 60s when the National Professional Soccer League and the US Association, the United Soccer Association, merged to form the NASL, that football really begins to take off again. And you have teams like the Cosmos, you have teams like the Aztecs. But again, it's not until 1975 when the New York Cosmos signs Pele in a 3-year contract at $2.8 million, which is a massive amount of money in the 1970s, making him the highest paid athlete in the world. That football becomes massively popular. Almost overnight, 10 million people are tuning into CBS to watch Pele make his debut in a crumbling stadium. Let's take a little bit of a look just now and see some of the action from the NASL.
This is the CBS Evening News with Roger Mudd substituting for Walter Cronkite.
For years, public schools in this country have emphasized sports like baseball, football, basketball, and track. Now there's a fifth one, soccer, and it's fast becoming as popular here as it's been in the rest of the world.
Crossing it very quickly with his right foot from the left of his foot. Hudson diving in. There goes Dubose with his left hand. As I say, almost. As the cat counts off the circle, there's a shot. And is deflected by Mauser over the crossbar. We're going to have.
I'm a massive fan of the NASL history and the stuff that kind of goes on. I think it's worth a podcast in itself, definitely. How important to you do you think Pele is in the development of popularity of football in America?
Pele is absolutely huge because he's one of these players, you know, that transcends the sport. If you maybe never heard of football, you've probably heard of Pele. Like even still now, you know. So in his prime, it's a huge deal. Obviously by 75, he's kind of past his prime, but he's still Pele. It's still a massive thing. So you say 10 million people turn on their tellies to watch Pele. And the thing is, 10 million people don't necessarily stay. You know, so he's a big sort of the marquee draw, if you will. But then once you're in, you know, the people watch it and go, "Oh, that's cool, that's Pele." Boom, and they've seen it once. You know, once they've seen it. But as a whole, as an introduction, because maybe if 1 million people stay, that's still a win. You know, that's still people that wouldn't have maybe cared about it as much before. So in terms of him even introducing Americans to soccer, to the idea of soccer, or to even the idea of teams, you know, it's huge. It then becomes a gateway for other clubs to bring in other players, and particularly other clubs to bring in a marquee name or a big name, which again, you could argue is to the detriment of what's going on. You know?
The Cosmos and Pele's moved to them. They moved from a tiny stadium in Randall's Island out to giant stadium eventually. You know, there's record attendance is set to people to come and see Pele. It's still quite small, the amount of people that are still travelling to watch games elsewhere. But when Pele's in town, there's massive audiences. Huge TV deals. Pele sees this almost as being like the kind of final frontier of football, that he's coming here to bring football to America. Even though it's been there, he's bringing it to America. It's the sport of the future. The deal that they set up is not only just to buy Pele the player, but also to buy his rights. They signed all sorts of additional contracts. But of course, America being America, they want to make their own rules. So rules are found in this. We've got a countdown clock from 90 minutes. An offside line. Goals could carry over as additional points. 3 per game. That means you could win the season with less wins than your rivals, but if you scored more goals, then that counted. 6 points for a win. 3 for a draw. Eventually the draws are scrapped because there has to be a winner because this is America. And we go to one of my favourites, the 35-yard line, got rushed to goal. The same to ice hockey. The points, these obviously are scored, and this will fluctuate over time. But I mean, if you're a football purist from Europe, what are you thinking when you see these changes?
It's got to drive you bananas, isn't it? It's not football if they're changing the rules like that. And it's not even a subtle thing. It's to make it Americana. It's to make it, it's probably one step away from putting it into quarters, or something like that. The countdown clock from 90 minutes. I don't know. It's very five-a-sidesy. The 35-yard line, or the offside line. It's a bit like the Sabutio table. There's a lot of stuff, but do you know what? I quite like it. There's a lot of people that absolutely hate that. But there's part of me. I remember watching a NASL game and the commentary. The commentary referring to the danger zone and the goaltender. The goaltender liked what was going on in the danger zone. He liked that edge it had to give him. So there's part of me that kind of does really enjoy that, and I don't know if it's a guilty pleasure or just a pleasure. But if you're a purist, you're gonna just
hate it.
You're gonna go yes.
Which is one of the arguments that maybe sets up when the USA World Cup comes to America. Obviously, you spoke about the knock-on effect. You've got Beckenbauer coming as well to the Cosmos, George Best going to the Los Angeles Aztecs, Eusebio joining Las Vegas. It becomes like people in teams, and all of a sudden they have world-class players imported next to them. However, the model for this league, do you think it was years ahead of its time, or do you feel that it was maybe something that was never going to survive?
I think it was ahead of its time, but I think it was also ahead of its time. That was part of the downfall, and it maybe wasn't. Maybe it was too ambitious, As you say, you've got these big names at a club. You have smaller clubs trying to get a big name, but they're maybe not getting these players who are coming in from Europe or South America, and they're not bringing the same revenue, So things like that is ahead of its time, but at the same time it's difficult. It's a bit kind of quicksand. I think having teams in LA, teams in New York, it feels like a real league. It feels like the American league because it's America. But it's so vast. It's so, and that's where it's too ambitious. And it maybe becomes a kind of victim of its own ambition.
We have here, I've got this, which is not a real top, it's just a top I got from JD Sports or something a few years ago. You've got a replica Aztec shirt there. Our mum's cousin, John Mason, played for the Aztecs in the 1970s, and of course, we have that story where we went to clear out our Uncle Gerard's house when he was moving house, and hanging up in the cupboard was George Best's actual jacket from his training days at Aztecs. And of course, we're told, help, you can collect something, and both of us decided maybe we were too scared to ask for the Aztecs George Best top, and instead I think I took a Stephen King book.
I took a video or something.
It's pretty rubbish.
Taking the jacket. I mean, it would look good here, if nothing else,
John emigrated from Bells Hill, was one of the first players to come through the sort of UCLA team, the university course, and then ends up getting drafted into the Aztecs team, plays for 3 years, amazing. And of course we have that famous picture as well, that I don't have with me just now. I'll insert one of the pictures. However, our grandma said, I got my picture taken once with George Best and Pele, I think it's upstairs, and caused a frantic overhaul of our house.
It was, we're still chasing the ghost of George Best's jacket.
Aye, and even after she died, we continued to hunt in the house to see maybe it was in there. But that's the picture we have is George Best, Pele, and John Mason, but not the one of our grandma.
But I mean, it's still quite an incredible thing to have two players of that stature in the one place at the one time in the one photo.
Yeah.
You know.
Have you any favourite strips from the NASL era at all before we move on to USA '94?
Again, yeah, there's some crackers. The Aztecs one is definitely a favourite. The Cosmos one's very cool. Things like the California Surf. There's a lot of stuff that, do you know what's horribly 70s, and it doesn't kind of work as well now. But there is one, and it was one with the frills on it.
I think it's from Dallas. We'll find that, we'll insert it. It's a beautiful strip. I think it's not the Rawhides. I need to
Is it
find
Denver?
it. It's Denver, yes, it might well be. We'll find it, we'll get it put in.
But that one.
Aye, a belter, as I'm sure you'll see. Some wonderful kits there, I think you'll agree. Really setting up the very 70s, as you say. Some of them could do them with a pair of bell bottoms and would we move on from there. So we're moving into the 1980s now. The NASL has collapsed by 1985. Soccer in America is in an indoor league, which I think is quite good. Obviously not indoor league to be confused with the ITV show of the same name, but it's more of a 5-a-side, 7-a-side. It's seen as a sport that's not played by males. It tends to be college students. It tends to be played by kids. It's not a sport that's been able to create its own heroes, which is a massive issue as well. I think the fact that America never really created that all-American soccer star. However, America is still fresh in the world of wanting to bid and be part of the World Cup and be part of FIFA, and their bid for the 1986 World Cup after Colombia's decision to hold the tournament has fallen through. The expansion of 16 teams to 24 is too much for Colombia, and it's between Mexico, Canada and USA. Henry Kissinger comes on board, tries to get involved as well to push it through. FIFA don't really care about Henry Kissinger too much, and eventually, as we know, it goes to Mexico. And what an amazing World Cup Mexico 86 is, but it has that real Mexican feel. As USA has that American feel, and it falls at the right time. Hypothetically speaking, how different do you think it would be had the USA World Cup been hosted in 1986 in Mexico?
Do you know, I would have definitely missed it. But I think it would have been a real... it would have had that glorious NTSC glow that Mexico 86 had and USA 94 had, but they were more wavy in 86. I think that would have been really pretty. But as a World Cup, I think it would have had its own... Do you know what? There's no doubt about it. It would have had its own brilliance. It would have had its own moments, as every World Cup does. The thing... You know, the thing about it though, FIFA, after it being awarded to Colombia and then, you know, them being stripped of that, they're not, realistically, they wouldn't be able to give it to a country who doesn't have an outdoor league, whose league that they do have is crumbling. It's kind of on hiatus, you know, and they were really looking to bring it back by 86 and kind of restart things again. So at this point, there's more arguments to not give it to America than to give it to them in 86. But I think if it had gone there, it would have still been... Well, it wouldn't have been Mexico 86, but it would have its own magic.
In the meantime, there's 1984 Olympics in LA, which is a massive success. And the facilities are there as the Olympics goes Hollywood, pretty much. You know, it is a massive event. It must have been a huge influence then later on, whenever FIFA looked to award the USA World Cup. Do you think they're saying, can you replicate the Olympics on a massive scale, countrywide scale?
I would say Yes, like whenever the Olympics came around in '84, like ABC network, they were a bit reluctant to show the football, the soccer side, and show it live or show it in its entirety because it's going to be a channel changer as far as they're concerned. So I think the football side of that, FIFA weren't maybe prepared to overlook. And as you say, it's the can you replicate the party? Can you replicate the big scale? So what are the selling points? It's your big sponsors you can get, it's your big TV networks, and it's your big stadiums. So it has to be over the top. It has to be huge as the Olympics.
Do you know, funny enough, on the topic of stadia, which we're kind of moving into now as we start to move to 1994 World Cup, there's a huge difference in the sorts of stadiums that you have in 1990, the ones that are coming in 1994. 1990's got a lot of crumbling, dark stadiums in Italy. USA, the stadiums are bright, they're big, flashy, at least 53,000 capacity, and across the 9 cities we've got the Rose Bowl, we've got the Stanford Stadium in Stanford, California, we've got the Pontiac Silverdome, an indoor one in Pontiac, Michigan, home of WrestleMania 3.
Yes.
Giant Stadium, East Rutherford, New Jersey, the Dallas Rose Bowl in Dallas, Texas, we've got Soldier Field in Chicago, the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, Florida, the
WrestleMania
Foxborough
24.
Stadium, the Robert Kennedy Memorial Stadium. You know, this is like, these are big wrestling stadiums that are now going to host football. Each one almost has its own climate, its own time zone, its own weather conditions. Every city is completely different in its makeup and in its diversity as well. But you know, they really are iconic stadiums. What's your thoughts on an American stadium for USA '94?
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's like I think again that's what I was saying earlier, making the transition from wrestling fan to football fan was probably part of things like that. And even if it's a crumbling stadium, it's still done up to look, part of the World Cup. Like I think, like in Stanford, I don't think that's still there anymore. Certainly the Silverdome is unfortunately no longer with us either. But yeah, they're amazing, they're incredible venues, and as you say, they've got their own appeal to them, they've got their own feeling, and pretty much their own climate. I think whenever America had kind of gone for the World Cup, they had suggested using smaller stadiums, because that would be easier to fill, be easier to kind of work with. But again, it comes back to the Olympics of we want the bonkersness, we want the Americana, and we want the huge stadiums, so by default it became them. So these are sitting empty over the summer. There you go.
So it really is a tale of two penalties. One at the start, kicked the tournament off, and one at the end, which we'll come to in good time. The idea of the game being played indoors as well at the Pontiac Silverdome, and America kicked things off one day later. They're having to look at even growing grass in the stadium rather than it being played on AstroTurf, which had been a huge fear that it was going to be played on AstroTurf, or they were going to make the goals bigger to have more goals, or they were going to have quarters instead of halves. All these things are pretty much go away right after things kick off. The USA World Cup opening match for the USA team, in fact, against Switzerland, becomes the first game played indoor. This Silverdome, which we spoke about a few minutes ago, appears in the group phase only. But the reality is that the Silverdome's actually got quite an airy feel to it. And of course, American climates, travel, the games are played in the afternoon to suit European travellers. But, looking back at the NTSC style hazy footage, there's a great aesthetic, a great look to most of the games in the American World Cup.
It's a very bright, hugely bright, kind of very television appeal to it, For the Silverdome, what in the kind of lead up to USA '94, what FIFA had done was they'd had the USA Cup, and so they had that in 1992, 93. They actually had it going on until the year 2000, but so 92, 93 were the kind of test the water, see how this goes. In 93 they had England versus Germany in the Silverdome, and again it's like insanely hot. I think the LA Times, they covered it, and they talk about how muggy it was inside and how fans and players were like visually uncomfortable. But still, it's the look. This looks amazing on TV. There's a nice silverness to it. There's a nice glow in the strips. We're going 100% going with this,
Of course, England don't make the World Cup. USA 94's got 24 teams, no England or Scotland, but it's first time appearances as well from Nigeria, Saudi Arabia and from the Greeks. Saudi Arabia, South Korea, Cameroon qualify, Morocco, Nigeria, Mexico, the USA as hosts, Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, Colombia, we've got Belgium, Bulgaria, Germany, Greece, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, Republic of Ireland, Romania, Russia, Spain, Sweden and Switzerland. Some great strips, some great kits, and you talked about these things already. We've got Adidas, Umbro, Diadora, Lotto, Mitre and Chamel. But you spoke a few minutes ago about some of the beautiful colours of kits. This is technically, elements at least, a kit podcast. What are some of your favourite kits from this World Cup?
Do you want my favourite?
Give us it.
Probably favourite ever is Ireland away. It's the white jersey, the green, 3 green lines on it, 3 lines on the shirt, if you will. It's glorious white shirt. You know, when you see it on telly again, it's that the magic of what was going on in the World Cup. But the first time I saw it in real life, it had been hanging up on the ceiling in a pub, and it kind of been yellowed from years of cigarette smoke. And I think somebody must have been wearing it as well before, because it was kind of spillage on it. So when I did see it eventually in real life, it was a lot more yellow than I ever imagined, but it's still a cracker.
Any more kits? Any ones that you love?
It so happens, USA again, the home and away top, but the kind of boldness and the time and placeness of the Stars and Stripes, it's wildly mid-90s, isn't it?
Very mid-90s. The Americans for this one tried to replicate the look of denim.
Yes.
So they've got a kind of stonewashed pattern through it, but realising it would be far too hot to wear actual denim kits.
And it was an idea to go for actual denim.
And I think that the guy who designed that same kit was also a guy called Peter Moore, who's responsible for Nike Air Jordan design whenever they kicked off in America. One of my favourite tops is Jorge Campos.
Yes.
Any Campos kits stand out to you?
It's actually, the answer is any Campos kit. But there's a picture in my mind I always see. I think it may be Ireland, Mexico. And it's again probably the searing heat, you know, and it's a yellow and pink sort of number. Campos always said is the designs, he made it himself, didn't he? Designed himself.
He did.
And it was the inspiration from his hometown that kind of gave him the designs for his shirt. I don't know what his hometown looked like. It might have been absolutely bonkers.
Do you still find it difficult? I know as a child you did, to not pass by a pack of coloured highlighters without designing a Campos style strip.
I do it all the time, yeah. Still, I'm 36. Yes, I do enjoy that, but again, it has to be. See if it's like, you know, these kind of slightly darker highlighters. I'm not interested. You need your classics, your orange, your greens, and love it.
Umbro released a Campos style strip in the 1990s as well. Modelled here by Neville Southall. Maybe not as interesting as the Campos one, however, it still looks good. Adidas, sorry, you go. That
was actually, I remember having that myself, and it didn't ever look as good. But the part of the thing of the Campos thing was the simultaneously short and long sleeves. You know, so it was rolled up or cut off or whatever it was. But I do remember trying to kind of stand in front of the mirror, and then go out and try and be George Campos. But then eventually, if I wasn't playing football, maybe just wear it out with actual stonewashed jeans, and a Campos goalie top with a collar up.
It's a good look. Germany, Romania, you mentioned them as well. The USA kit. Adidas make Germany, they make Romania, but we're in kind of two camps with Adidas at this point, because quite a few times in this World Cup there are teams that have the Adidas equipment template, which is a big chunky Adidas stripes going across, and the only difference really is in colourway. They've got rid of the trefoil and they're starting to use the idea of the equipment as the badge, like Sweden, Norway, Bulgaria, etc. But then of course you've got other teams that are wearing really bespoke Adidas kits, such as Argentina, Germany, Spain, Republic of Ireland, and of course America. It's very 90s, the Adidas equipment kit. Your own one, as we spoke about, takes the idea of the US Stars and Stripes and the flag as well and the home kit. But of course there's also some wonderful kits made by Diadora. Italy's one iconically remembered, unfortunately the eventual penalty miss that will sum up this tournament for at the end of it. But some cracking kits as well. Nigeria's had some beautiful strips too, and some amazing goalkeeper tops out with the George Campos style too.
Yeah, Taffarel's Brazil top was a bit of a cracker. And the Adidas equipment one that was kind of became the mid-90s staple for a goalie top. But there's, again, real classic shirts.
Very, there's actually, depending on where you got your Adidas equipment goalie top made, there was slight changes to the structure and the fabric. Andy Gorham had a unique colourway of one as well, which was orange and grey, where the other ones had different colourways. Pat Bonner in it, I like the fact that Adidas tried to make it look like the kind of predator marking, and also the idea of a goal net as well. But that becomes a kind of iconic, as you say, goalie top of that strip. We're going to go look at groups now, Chris, and we're going to look at some of the stars that come across in the World Cup. However, earlier on I spoke about America never managing to create a real soccer star, but they love a sporting hero. They love a hero from other sports. And the USA World Cup kicks off with two things. One is Diana Ross taking a penalty kick, and the other is a low-speed police chase involving one of their iconic sporting heroes, O.J. Simpson. What do you remember about O.J. Simpson's chase?
I suppose it's more retrospectively kind of getting to grips with it, because whenever that footage would be going out at the time, and it would be huge at the time, ITV's coverage was very much the World Cup's going on, the World Cup. You know, if you're watching it elsewhere, particularly if you're watching America and you know O.J. Simpson as the American footballer, and all of a sudden he's, there's all kind of things going on. There's the double murder, and then there's the high-speed chase, or low-speed chase as well. It's quite a shift. It's like maybe equivalent of a footballer in Britain, kind of zooming about in a Fiesta.
Yep. So we've kicked off the World Cup. We have Germany winning 1-0 over Bolivia. Jurgen Klinsmann's goal has come in. We have America who've drawn with Switzerland in their game, and we've got a wonderful Group A that's set up. We've got World Cup heroes to come and some World Cup villains. We have Hadji, who's one of the Maradona of the Carpathians. What's your own remembrance of players like Hadji back in that World Cup team?
Again, this is when you're getting into football and you get players. I think was it against Colombia. Hadji scored the goal from like 30 yards out, and I don't even know if it was an intended pass or a wayward pass, but when you see something like that, it's like, wow, this is, so that was kind of opened up a whole new world. Again, he becomes one of the icons, I think, not just for myself but for millions of other people. Your Stoichkovs. I remember seeing Larsson, but I don't remember too much of Larsson at World Cup. He would become a later icon, wouldn't he? But yeah, there's players that just, it kind of stands out in your mind forever. It's going to stand the test of time. Hadji's one of them.
Mm-hmm. He's as he's known as the Maradona of the Carpathians. Has played in the 1990 World Cup, but this is really the standout World Cup for him. He's a kind of guy that would be synonymous with Group A and also the USA 94. But then you've got unknown quantities such as Alexei Lalas, who's known really for his extensive facial hair and his haircut. Stefan Shapiswat from the Switzerland team. Unfortunately, this World Cup will also be overshadowed by the death of Andreas Escobar, who is murdered back home in Colombia after having scored an own goal and effectively ruled Colombia out of the World Cup qualifier. Mm-hmm. Colombia highly rated to become the winners of this, particularly Pele, who we spoke about earlier on, gives them the nod. Mm-hmm. How much, though, when we talk about think about the dark side of the World Cup, and looking back and researching the death of Escobar with different things that happened, how much do you feel his death overshadows USA 94? Or does it?
I think, looking back on the World Cup from years later, I don't think it overshadows the whole tournament at all. I don't think it takes away, but I think at the time it's a huge shock and it overshadows what's going on. It's kind of like, it's the reminder. It's kind of, like in the Euros this year, when Ericsson kind of had a cardiac arrest and things, and that overshadowed a lot, but it didn't take away from the tournament itself. But it was a reminder that there's bigger things to life than football, and I think it's one of those ones. But for Escobar, it was so, gruesome, and it is a very much a kind of that dark underbelly of football.
If you look at some of the events that have happened in World Cups in years previous, or you have an understanding of some of the political regimes that were linked to host nations, then this is up there with them.
Oh, absolutely.
Into Group B, and Group B produces 2 of the 4 semi-finalists of this World Cup, Brazil and Sweden, who meet twice in the World Cup. And it's one of the only groups where only 2 of the teams progress rather than 3. Cameroon and Russia broke 2 World Cup records. One World Cup record was for the most goals scored in one game. Oleg Salenko, who would eventually end up at Rangers, didn't do very much there. And he finishes the joint top scorer of the World Cup. And the second one is for the oldest player to have scored in the World Cup, Roger Milla. And I'm 40. I think I've still got a World Cup in me. But he scores. He scores the consolation goal, and it's not enough to take them through. It's not enough to take Russia through either, after their losses to Brazil and Sweden. The Swedes also progress in the second place with 5 points. You spoke about young Henrik Larsson, who I suppose is second to sort of guys like Thomas Brolin and Martin Dahlin, a great Swedish team. And unfortunately, Cameroon failed to repeat their surprise performance from the previous tournament. Group C, 2 teams from the round of 16 move as Spain and defending champions Germany progress to round 2. Coming back from 2 goals down to snatch a draw with Spain. One of the surprises of this group are the South Koreans. Do you remember the South Koreans in this World Cup at all?
And I really remember the game against Germany. I actually remember the morning of that, it being on, and you're thinking, sure, there's not too much of a challenge here for Germany. I know they're the champions, so surely on paper there's not too much. And really, it's Germany go 3 goals ahead. South Korea can bring it back to 3-2, and they're not that far away from getting a draw with the world champions. And it's a big thing, Again, this is a game being played at midday in Dallas, I think. So your players getting absolutely zapped of energy, and so I think there was, I think things like that, but certainly for South Korea in that World Cup, it was a good show, a good response to being written off.
Germany defeated Bolivia in the group's opening game. They finished with 7 points. Spain had to settle for second place, despite winning all the games. Erwin Sanchez made history after scoring the nation's first World Cup goal in a 3-1 loss to Spain. Prior to 1994, Bolivia had never scored in any of the previous World Cup appearances in 1930 and 1950. Group D is the tournament favourites Argentina, led by Diego Maradona. This is what I suppose is a kind of sad ending to a wonderful career. They dominate, they win the first 2 games, maximum 6 points. Gabriel Batistuta gets a hat-trick. They beat Nigeria. Nigeria actually don't have anybody for their home league. Nigeria seem very, very impressive in their debut in the World Cup. But Maradona, who's played with them in the first 2 games, and that celebration that he's known for, that kind of kicks things off, and people start saying, I knew he was on drugs.
Yeah, it's like, where did it all go wrong? It's again, looking back on that, it's like, was it any shock that 4 days later he tests positive for a cocktail of 5 different illegal substances?
Maradona had been Argentina hadn't been doing very well in domestic or international games beforehand.
Yeah.
And the push was for Maradona to re-enter and come back to the squad. Obviously, he's lost a lot of weight and wants to slim down.
I mean, but also in that kind of FIFA were also quite vocal about Maradona should be part of this World Cup in America if Argentina are to qualify, because they need the draw, because it's in America. People probably won't go see it. So again, it's a bit like the Peles of the NASL. You need to have these big names that people, even if they don't really know football, they might know these guys. So Maradona was also given the sort of elbow to take part. But yeah, it was a real really bad qualifying campaign. They lost to Colombia, and it was a doing. It was 5-0 or 5-1, and then they It was a playoff that they had to get there with Australia. Again, so it's not the Argentina who, won it in '86 or qualified for the final in 1990. It's a shadow of that team, isn't it?
Maradona had tested positive in 1981 for cocaine, had been banned for 15 months by FIFA. They talked about drug problems that he might have had. Had he obviously pulled out of his squad that year, as you said about FIFA wanting a star player, he's come back from like firing rifles at photographers and journalists turn up at his house. After the match of him screaming at the camera, he's then led off in the next game by a nurse to go and test him give him a drugs test. And for some people, they seem going off the pitch and maybe they don't have as much of an awareness of Maradona and apart from World Cups, because he's a player who's been at 4 World Cups and you only see him every 4 years, the way Telly was back in those days. However, like my favourite footballer of all time, what legacy do you think that Maradona left on football?
Oh, it's huge, absolutely huge. Again, transcends the sport. I think he also had such a whirlwind career and such an infamous career at times, both on and off the park. So I think, see the way that he went out in '94, it had to be something like that. Like he couldn't just kind of fade into obscurity sort of thing. That you see the Argentina squad, there's Maradona, he was tired, did he? It had to be something mental, and it was. So it was, I suppose, true to form.
An absolute legend. I think you're totally right. Transcends sports, and I think his loss has really allowed people as well to appreciate just how good he was at domestic football in Italy, pulling whole countries behind him, pulling whole towns and cities behind him, transforming unfashionable teams such as Napoli to become, champions. One of the greatest ever, and also a player who played in the modern era, and managed to still be that talismanic player. Argentina have to show as well that they don't just have to rely on one superstar to go through. However, unfortunately, without Maradona, they lose the next games. Nigeria win the group in goal difference. Bulgaria's victory over Argentina, it's another shock win, earns them second place. We'll talk about Bulgaria later on, but we're going to move to Group E, which is my favourite memory of 1994 USA. And it's Ireland and Italy taking place in New Jersey, which just seems as the kind of perfect setting. It's New York, it's cosmopolitan, it's the epicentre of Italian and Irish immigration when you think of kind of New York's development and that of modern America post-Civil War. It's two communities, it's an integral part of this. Both communities have come through hardships, through poverty, through working on really low wages, through building America. The Italians have suffered, at times during the war, have been put into internment camps as well. The Irish have come over here and you've got 75,000 people at Giant Stadium to watch these two countries do battle. The first question is, do you think that this was a specific setting chosen by FIFA for this?
1,000,000%. Absolutely. So obviously, you have, as you said, you've got these inbuilt communities in New York, New Jersey, Irish communities, Italian communities. But also completely, they are going to be in that group. They're going to have this fixture in this town, in the city. When they had the US Cup in '92, Ireland played Italy again then, and they had the match in Boston. Again, sort of testing the water with the Irish and Italian communities that are in Boston. Again, huge communities. But it wasn't just Italy that were, that were placed strategically, say. So you had Germany, that were based in Chicago, huge German population in Chicago. Korea, that were based in Dallas, huge Korean population in Dallas. Brazilian populations in California, Florida, Massachusetts, New York. So all states that were, just happened to be chosen for that World Cup. So I think everyone had a strategic sort of placing. And again, it makes sense though. I wouldn't hold it against FIFA. It makes sense because if you're trying to sell this sport to this massive country, you need to kind of pick out the pockets where people are already waiting and already get it. So yeah, I completely think it was Ireland. It wasn't just in New York, New Jersey by coincidence.
My memories of this are Ray Houghton's goal. I remember coming out the bathroom and jumping, my dad watching upstairs, my dad jumping up, knocking his Guinness on the floor and spending, just as Paul McGrath tried to fend off Baggio's onslaught, my dad spent the next 15 minutes trying to clear up the spilled pint before our mum saw it and get in trouble. It's a wonderful...
I think I watched it in an 18 tent.
Did you?
Yeah.
A wonderful goal from Ray Houghton. Fantastic chip. A bit of revenge on Italy. A shock result.
Mm-hmm.
The next time Ireland will play, they'll go into the next game, playing Norway, Mexico still to come. Every single team in this group finishes level on points.
Yeah.
And they finish on goals as well?
I think for Norway, a goal, because Norway was the only team obviously didn't go through. I think Norway maybe had a goal less. But it's so close. It's like the kind of group of death thing, isn't it?
It really was.
But do you know, even now, like, I think at any era, it'd be a fascinating group. You know, just these four teams there's always some sort of appeal.
Yeah. There's also a huge Mexican contingent as well living in America too, and particularly as you go southern into Los Angeles and places as well, but also in New York as well. My also other memories of this group too are the Ireland game when John Aldridge having that outburst on the touchline to come on it and look, and the fact that the Mexicans are maybe used to playing in this heat. Americans as well, it's their climate. Italy possibly too, but here you have the Irish team made up from guys from the Scottish League and the English League entirely who are not used to this weather at all.
Yeah, but again, even then, it's still, as you said earlier on, it's to fit in with the European broadcasts. So they're having matches taking part in insane heat. So it's, again, at the expense of the players' health, isn't it? It's like it was 110 degrees or something on the pitch for the Ireland Mexico game. Pat Bonner wearing a skip cap, and that's another sort of huge bizarre memory that sticks with me.
Pat Bonner was at that point, I think, had been released by Celtic and was possibly on his way to Kilmarnock. All the other rumour was that he was going to be going to America to take field goals in American football, but obviously ultimately re-signed with Tommy Burns coming in. Baggio still hasn't come alive in this World Cup, and he won't do until they qualify through. But Mexico go through on goals scored and winners of the group. Italy and Ireland progress through with identical records. And Norway don't, as you said earlier on. Campos, one of your heroes of the World Cup. Any thoughts on George Campos?
It was fantastic. It was somebody who was completely addictive and completely intriguing to watch. Somebody that wasn't built like a goalie. Do you know what I mean? He's like 5'6", 5'7", so he had to make that work for him. You know, he had to use his sort of lack of height he can't be one of these players that just comes out and just be big. So he had this sort of acrobatic sort of approach to things, and let him diving at you as well as towards the ball. So great as a goalie, great as a sort of sweeper keeper sort of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Before that was really as much of a thing. So a real remembered for his shirts, but a real pioneer of football, of soccer.
I think we only really got to see Campos again in France 98,
yeah.
And then if you ever caught him on MLS on Channel 5 in the 90s later on. However, or in 1985 onwards. But Campos really kind of sets that style of South American keepers who, like guys such as René Higuita, José Luis Chilavert, exotic and slightly erratic, and when I kind of started modelling myself on them as a goalkeeper, Jim Sweeten, who I spoke about in the last podcast, I don't think he liked it very much because he didn't really know what he was going to do next. Group F, our last kind of group of this one, just so we've got the Argentina in Group D. Belgium suffered the same fate despite winning the first two games in Morocco and against the Netherlands. Belgium finished third, lost to Saudi Arabia 1-0 in that third game. During that game, Said Al Arawan runs from the halfway line through one of the best goals of the World Cup, rips everyone apart and sticks it into the back of the net.
Again,
a forgotten goal in this World Cup.
That's exactly
actually.
what I was going to say. It's a kind of, if it was a Maradona goal, it'd be iconic, and it is an iconic goal. But it's just it's overlooked in the annals of history,
But Belgium will find themselves, the Netherlands will head through. Belgium will be a team who progress, but at the same time, they will be the the side who maybe aren't as thought of in this World Cup as some of the other teams. Into the knockout stages, Chris. Let's move on and see some of these teams from there. We have Romania and Argentina, where the two of them meet. The Maradona of the Carpathians bests the Maradona less Argentina. Saudi Arabia lose to Sweden 3-1. The Netherlands beat the Republic of Ireland. We say goodbye to Ireland with a bit of a Pat Bonner fumble into the net there, but of course it's a goal that knocks Ireland out. They don't have that same chance to move through as he once did in the 1990s World Cup. There's no Timofte the substitute against Bonner.
Bonner saves, Ireland are through.
Nothing like that going on.
A very famously recreated Sheridan goal.
Certainly was. It certainly still is to this day.
Is,
on the 4th of July, though, we have two of the great teams of this World Cup. We have the future champions, Brazil, taking on the Americans. The America loves a success story. It's apple pie. It's underdog story. It's taking place on the 4th of July. What could possibly go wrong? Well, they don't go through. But they have a plucky existence right up to this point. How important do you think it was for America to have a good World Cup?
Again, hugely important, because I think in any World Cup, for the host nation to do well, they have to, for the World Cup to be a success, the host nation has to kind of do well, at least at a point, at least to keep the casual fan interested. But for America, you're trying to sell this sport to a country that's a developing nation, as it were, in terms of soccer. So they have to do well. At the same time, there's no pressure, because you could say, well, nobody cares. Like, no, do you know what I mean? But I think they have, in terms of football, selling that as the package of USA, they have to be there. They have to do well. Probably one of the biggest disasters of that game was Tab Ramos, and he gets an elbow from Leonardo, which Leonardo went to see him that same night in hospital and apologised for breaking his eye socket.
What happened?
Leonardo went to see him in the hospital.
Did he?
After breaking his eye socket, and apparently Ramos kind of said that's all right. I don't know to what extent. Maybe it was
just felt bad.
Like,
had to go and apologise, like getting made to go to visit a neighbour.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Sorry about the window,
Bulgaria put out your friends Mexico.
Yes.
Penalties, we say goodbye. Campos isn't the hero on that day. Nigeria are defeated by Italy after extra time, and this is when Roberto Baggio's World Cup comes alive.
Absolutely. This is, I suppose, a sleeping giant in the group stages, almost non-existent a wee bit. And again, you can see that for the Italian team. On paper, it's the group of death that they were in. They probably still should have come out on top. If you're looking statistically at what's all there. And it is absolutely, this is where Baggio comes alive and Italy as a whole comes alive.
Spain defeats Switzerland 3-0 to progress through and move through to the quarterfinals. In the quarterfinals, there are some talking points in there. We have Italy defeating Spain 2-1. Baggio again, and he's Dino Baggio, his namesake. The Netherlands against Brazil, where Brazil win and have that famous World Cup celebration. As a recent father, but will you ever use that as one of your celebrations? Whenever you go back to playing fives again?
I don't know what I'll be celebrating, but yeah, I definitely get in trouble every time I do that. From the missus. Yeah, it's a classic celebration. It was definitely used a lot in subsequent, after going back to school after the summer. There was a lot of, primary fives kind of kid when they had a baby. He's
Romania,
not a player himself, Bebeto's.
That's right, yeah. Romania are put out by Sweden. We get a wee glimpse of Henrik Larsson taking a decisive penalty. And Thomas Ravelli makes some big saves. But we say goodbye to Romania, beating 2 World Cups in a row on penalties.
Again, it's still an incredible run in 2 World Cups. I've getting to the last 16 and the last 8. It's big deals. And again, I suppose it's just somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. It's an unfortunate, it's a rubbish way to go out into it.
But if you're a neutral, you love penalties.
Oh, absolutely. Sitting maybe 89 minutes and 72 minutes, let's say, 2 each draws, nobody score. Just keep it. Let's
go to penalties. Let's stay up a bit later. It's 4 in the morning.
Well, that's it. It's the.
As long as I get up to school, I can watch the football. In this World Cup as well, in this round, our big kind of talking point is the unfancied 31st nation in the world, Bulgaria, beating Germany. I mean, we have Stoichkov inspired, but apart from that, the team really aren't that well known. Although they do play in they've got players in Hamburg, and players in the Spanish league and Portuguese league. Ilian Kiriakov would eventually come to the old Aberdeen. Do you think this is one of the biggest shocks in World Cup history? Is it up there, or is it maybe been overplayed?
No, I think it probably is one of the bigger shocks. Not just because it happened, but because of where it happened, and it happens in the quarterfinals. And it's not just a relatively unknown team, going through to the last four of the World Cup, but it's in the process of doing that they put out the world champions, who really are playing their first World Cup as Germany. They won the World Cup as West Germany. So it's a big thing. Again, looking back, the papers at the time must be Germany. There's no way Bulgaria can upset them. They've beaten Argentina, but as you said, this is the Maradona-less Argentina. This is their first game with him out. So that's a bigger shock, but because of where they beat Germany and how they beat Germany, it's probably is a bigger deal.
Okay, in the old semi-finals, our favourites, the old semis, we are meeting with a second time for Sweden and for Brazil. A late Romario goal comes in. This is also where Sweden are looking, you spoke about there earlier on, can we take them to penalties? Mm-hmm. And Bulgaria eventually go down to Italy 2-1. But this inspires this golden generation that come through of Bulgarian players. Stelian Petrov, who's a young boy watching this at that time, who says that this was the thing that really spurred him on, was the success of these players, even though Petrov had been playing at that point as a youngster, and his father had been a player. But really, this belief that these guys can make it elsewhere. Baggio puts them to the sword and puts them out, and Italy go through, Brazil go through, and we have a third place playoff that takes place between Sweden and Bulgaria, where for the first time we get the glimpse of the boy who would be king, young Henrik Larsson, scoring on the 37th minute to make it 3-0. Any thoughts on young Larsson in those days?
Again, I just thought it was really cool. I only knew him from seeing him then and then, and I wouldn't really know him. And in fact, I wouldn't really know him until he went to Celtic, to be honest. But I just never seen him. It was really cool. And that was always something. That third and fourth place match, because typically it's a fixture that really doesn't matter. It only matters if there's two teams that shouldn't be there, as it were. Like South Korea and Turkey in the 2002 World Cup, that's the same sort of thing. But if you're looking at two teams that have been, say Germany and Uruguay or something, teams that could potentially be in the final in the third and fourth place, what are they really playing for? But for the Sweden Bulgaria fixture, it's a huge thing. It's a huge thing for both sides. And it sounds cheesy, but there's no losers in that. Well, technically Bulgaria lost 4-0. They are the losers, but it's a big thing that they're there. So yeah, that was a big thing. But for Larsson, memories are just a great player that we'll enjoy later.
We'll find out much more about in a couple of years' time when he comes to Glasgow. The Italy go through, Brazil go through, and this is a kind of important journey from Brazil, who from 1970 hadn't succeeded at the World Cup. They tried to emulate other teams, but there was a rise of teams such as Argentina, West Germany, the Netherlands, who are coming through as the leaders in world football. Brazil tried to steal their flair players and make them more of a unit that prides itself on their defensiveness and a bit more determination. They have a couple of years of transition of trying to get the right balance between the team. Carlos Alberto Pereira is criticised for leaving out some players, brings a young Ronaldo with him as well. And Brazil put substance over style. Looking back, this Brazil team aren't as fondly remembered as the other Brazil teams of the past, or even some of the teams that will still come. Do you think that's a fair assumption?
Again, I think if they hadn't won that tournament, they would be absolutely crucified, But I think that was probably the saving grace. But yeah, they're really, in terms of when people look at legendary Brazilian teams, they're certainly overlooked, and they're certainly kind of picked apart. For me, at the time, that kind of they kind of were my default team that was going to win it. So I've always got a soft spot for that team, and I always remember a sort of Dunga and Romario and Taffarel with a sort of great fondness. But yeah, in general, they're really, compared to the Brazilian teams of previous generations, they are the kind of the middle child.
The Pele-less as well.
Yes.
And of course, there'll be great Brazil teams that will come up with guys like Roberto Carlos and Ronaldo and Juninho, and players that will go to the 2002 World Cup or the 1998 World Cup final as well. But this is the Brazil team, as you say, this is the Brazil team you kind of grew up on for those few years. On this way as well to the World Cup and Brazil's route from qualifying, there's also the death of Ayrton Senna, who's a massive cultural figure, the F1 driver in Brazil. And the Brazil team eventually, they dedicate their win to him. But he's like a figure in a country that is massive poverty. People find themselves pulling towards the sporting success of the football team and the national pride of the F1 driver. They declare three days in mourning for him. And that becomes something that it's almost like people putting great faith in those people, because they are almost like living out the dreams and giving them immense national pride as being a Brazilian.
Yeah, I suppose it's the kind of part of the escapism, and also then partly vicariously living through that success, isn't it? And there's like sport in general does have that uniting thing, and brings people together. So yeah, I've got that. It makes sense why people would be doing it when people do that,
The divine ponytail who came to life in the in the group stages, the knockout stages, he comes to the rescue of Italy so many times, and even in the final, which is a 0-0 draw. He has chances, other teams have chances, so close. Taffarel makes some great saves, Palaiuki makes some great saves, and it comes to this 0-0, it's penalty kicks, there has to be a winner, it's the World Cup final. Eventually, Baggio misses the last penalty. Brazil win. Baggio is not the only person that misses, there's Franco Baresi, who misses as well, the opening penalty for Brazil. Do you feel that Baggio's World Cup is all lands on that penalty kick, or do you feel that Baggio still has this amazing World Cup but is maybe fondly or wrongly remembered for that penalty miss?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of both. I think his World Cup is kind of overshadowed by that. Like any good that he done in the group stages or knockout stages, or even in the 120 minutes of the final, is totally wiped out by this penalty miss. Not because he missed a penalty, because he missed the decisive penalty. As you said, Baresi missed the first penalty in the same way, like skies right over the top.
I think Massaro missed the third one.
He did,
well.
yes. But because that's not the one that effectively gives Brazil the trophy, it's not as notorious. Baggio became like a verb, to like that. Oh, he Baggio'd it, So it kind of becomes that thing. It's so notorious. So yeah, it does overshadow a good World Cup for him. I think it's kind of wrongly, it's kind of looking back on it now. It's unfair. I know that he'd gone into the final kind of carrying a bit of a knock, and had said to Iwasaki, like, see if maybe I come on during the second half, you bring on as a substitute, and he was told you come on from the start or you don't come on at all. And I think if he'd come on and it's 0-0, you're an hour into the game, that could have changed it. Obviously that's all hypothetical, but it's something that might not have been the notorious Baggio
Penalty miss.
Penalty miss.
Had Baggio even scored, and Brazil scored the next one, they'd have won it anyway.
Yeah, there's no. You need a scapegoat for that, don't you?
And he became it, unfortunately. In this summing up this World Cup, we have so much placed on the advertising, the razzmatazz, the build-up, the big stadiums. It's brash, it's bold, it's in your face, but it catapults football as well on a global scale, takes it to America, and is looking at then this kind of trying to shift attitudes in America. Do you feel that this World Cup succeeded in doing that?
It definitely changed the outlook of soccer. It didn't Americanise it, but it normalised it. It wasn't, as you said, there was the fear it was going to be giant goals for more goals, or any of that. The countdown clock that they had, way back in the NSL days. They didn't have to do that. They said, this is football, this is the rules. The only thing that changed, obviously, was the getting 3 points for the win rather than 2, and the pass backs. And that wasn't so much an American to appease Americans; it was to keep the FIFA thing turning over, you know. So yeah, I think it did succeed in bringing football to America because there's a tangible legacy that came from it.
And that legacy being the MLS.
MLS, yeah, exactly.
You've got 850,000 kids playing soccer at schools, at youth levels. The MLS has still got its critics, and it's still got people who say, well, there's too much of a wage cap, or there's too much of, money not be spent on a wage cap and trying to attract big name players but not getting the revenue in. But yet the legacy it created in itself. The World Cup also has got some wonderful things that came about it as well at that time. Looking at like games that came out, Subbuteo, some great World Cup moments and memories too. The success of this really also is the success of the national team, particularly even with the women's national team winning like 4 World Cups, 4 Olympic golds, 8 CONCACAF. The national team as well had a huge success. But USA 94 not only does that, also ushers in the modern era. And I think when you look at the world of football pre-Premier League or pre-European Cup going to Champions League, on a global stage at international level, USA 94 is that bridge between the 1990s and 80s into the modern era, which I think kind of kicks off post USA World Cup. And in terms of the globalisation of the game, really is that kind of last final frontier that it cements in there. There's some great footage as well of the World Cup. There's some great documentaries, 2 Billion Hearts. Have you any favourite USA 94 memorabilia before we kind of wrap things up?
My USA 94 Subbuteo set has to be the one of my absolute favourites. Although the picture on it was from Euro 92, which I never... and the USA strip was also from 92-93. That always annoyed me, but still. I think I rented the USA video game at the video shop every other week, mainly because of the range of teams you could get in it. I remember you told me it was rubbish.
It was pretty good. I quite enjoyed it as well. If this has been a World Cup that you haven't seen before, that's definitely worth checking out. There's countless of matches and there's lots of things available online. Great documentaries, including The Final Kick, which looks at the penalty shootout between Brazil and Italy. 2 Billion Hearts, which is the FIFA official World Cup movie. For some of us, this might have been a return trip to the golden summer of 1994 to recap and recall those days in the past. For others, it might have been a summer of hazy sunshine and bright strips, fantastic haircuts, deep goal nets, and a fond farewell to our journeys with Big Jack on tour in the World Cup. It's also a World Cup of heroes and villains, a World Cup where we bade a fond farewell to Diego Armando Maradona and a first hello to the boy who would be king. Many thanks to my guest, Christopher James Sheridan. Thanks to Paul John Dykes and to Kelvin Craig. A State of Mind Sell of Jerseys has been a production of A State of Mind Media. The story so far, the story continues.
Is this a bit of history?
It is! Out with a shot, and it's there!
And he's got to go to Middlesbrough and get something. And I'll tell you, honestly,